afternoon. It is good to see each of you here. Weston asked if, with everything he had going on, if he could preach next Sunday evening instead of today with teaching the classes he did, and of course all the shows he had going on. And so that's understandable. After this morning, I thought it would be good if we all turn to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. And I would like for us to look at verse 8. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 8, of course, when we think of the context of what Paul is dealing with here, in writing to the brethren at Thessalonica, he writes to them about, and remember their worry, they were worried that they had missed the second coming. They were worried that they had missed Christ coming back, and that in some way and in somehow this was a great deal of worry to them. And so Paul, there in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, in verse 1 and following there, really through 10, he's encouraging them that they haven't missed the second coming, and yet it's still to come, and that they were to labor as in the day and not the night. But I would like us to be reminded of what he says there in verse 8, where it says this, "But since we belong to the day, let us be sober, having put on the breastplate of faith and love, and for a helmet the hope of salvation." That word hope is an interesting word, isn't it? When we think about right after Adam and Eve sinned, and you can imagine them as they are hiding from God in the bushes. They've been told that there were consequences to eating of that forbidden fruit, weren't they? They were told that they were not to do it lest they die. Remember, it was Satan who changed the word and just said, "You won't surely die," or "not." Put the word "not" in there. And so you can imagine if it was that time, they had walked with God in the garden there, and they are hiding from Him because they know they have missed the mark. They have fallen short. They have transgressed His law. They were without hope in all reality. What all seemed like lost, what all seemed like falling apart to them, was going to be found in encouragement just a few verses later. There in Genesis chapter 3 and verse 15. There we find there we find God encouraging Adam and Eve and saying, listen, there is going to be hope for us to walk together again someday. Because he who is going to be born of woman, from the seed of Abraham eventually, would crush the head of the serpent and find victory and allow for salvation. And there in 1 Thessalonians 5, Paul is alluding to that very hope, that hope that was realized in Christ's death and burial and resurrection, the good news, the gospel. But since we belong to the day, let us be sober, having put on the breastplate of faith and love, and for a helmet the hope of salvation. When we think of all the pieces of armor that could be worn, what a blessing it is and what a necessity it is to have a helmet of hope, isn't it? When we go through trying times and we go through difficult times, it is the mind that is the biggest challenge. We can deal with the physical things, typically speaking, can't we? I can deal with the pain someone might inflict on me physically. It will hurt for a moment. It will hurt for a time there, but that I can handle. It's the emotional struggle that goes with that. And when we think of the helmet that goes on, it is a helmet that reminds us, though we are going through challenging times, it reminds us that there is hope still. We remember what David so famously said there in Psalm 23, where he said, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness for His name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for You are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. When we consider the hope of salvation, we realize it is found in the hope of knowing that one day, all the pain and tragedy, all the difficulties and struggles, one day they go away. One day there will be a time when we will be able to rejoice unending, where there will be no tears. There will be no sadness. We have a hope in that because God is our rock throughout all. The psalmist said in Psalm 18, verse 1 and 2, I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer. My God, my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield, and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. I'm reminded of the poster I'm sure you've all seen of the two sets of footprints you see going in the sand. And then there for a moment you see just one set, and then you see two sets again. And usually what follows along that poster is something like this. You see the one who's saying, God, I see that you are with me, and then I was walking by myself, and then you were with me again. Why did you leave me? Why were you not there during the trials and tribulations and difficulties that were there? And we see, of course, the response of God to that. And he says, I did not leave you, I was carrying you through that. All of us go through difficulties, some more than others. All of us will go through challenges. But as long as we keep the hope, the helmet of the hope of salvation, as long as we rely and put our refuge in the shield of our God, He will lead us beside the still waters when we think not possible. He will guard our hearts when we think are troubled. And He will comfort us in the ways that no one else can. He is the rock and the shield of refuge. As we think about our lives, we go throughout our lives, let us rely and let us hope in the salvation that Christ has given us. Though times can be challenging and times can be difficult, there is a hope that is stronger than all. A hope in a God who is forever great, forever perfect in His promises, and is forever comforting in His gentle hand. Maybe it is the case this afternoon. There's someone here who needs the prayers. Once again, the congregation, we always want to make that opportunity available. Maybe it is the case for someone here who hasn't quite been relying on the hope of salvation. If that's the case, I want to encourage you to make the change. To make the change and to look at the great blessing of that helmet of the hope of salvation. It keeps us sane when all things are going crazy. It keeps us grounded when everything seems to be flying. There's someone here who needs the prayers of the congregation this afternoon. Please don't hesitate. Let us know that we may help, comfort, and strengthen you as we stand and as we sing.